I should have married your younger sister. Lawrence, Duke of Ashenford, heard himself say it in the cold hall at the foot of his own staircase, with the last of the card party's carriages still grinding away down the drive, and he did not even trouble to look up from stripping off his gloves. It was not a cruelty. It was worse than that. It was carelessness, the sort of thing a tired man says at 1 in the morning to fill a silence, the way one might remark that the claret had been indifferent. Delia would have made the evening go, he added. She has the trick of it. You stood by the mantel for 2 hours together and hardly opened your mouth. His wife had stopped 3 steps up. The candle in her hand did not waver. Yes, Sabina said. She would have made it go. And then she came back down the 3 steps and set the candlestick on the hall table and drew the ring off her finger. Lawrence looked at it. It was the Ashenford ring, a square-cut sapphire in old gold that 6 duchesses had worn before her, and it lay in her palm looking very small. Sabina. Then go and propose tonight, she said. She said it perfectly pleasantly. There was no tremor in it and no heat. She took his hand, opened his fingers, and put the ring into them, and closed his fingers over it, and her own hands were quite steady and rather cold. The Rushbrooks keep late hours, and my mother will still be up. It is 9 miles. You would be there by 3. She picked up her candle again. Delia is 19 and she has refused 2 men this year because she does not care for either of them, and she would very likely have you, because she has admired you since she was 14 and everybody in my family knows it but you. I have never once stood in her way. I did not know until tonight that I was standing in yours. That is not what I... Good night, Lawrence. She went up the stairs. She did not hurry, and she did not slam anything, and at the turn of the landing she paused and said, in exactly the voice she used to the housekeeper, "There is a fire in your dressing room. Bourne kept it in." Then she was gone, and the Duke of Ashenford stood alone in his own hall holding his own ring, waiting for temper, for tears, for a door. None came. The house was entirely quiet. He told himself going up that it would be mended at breakfast. It was not mended at breakfast. Sabina came down at 8:30, as she always did, and poured his coffee, as she always did, and asked whether he meant to ride out to the Combe Farms today, because Bourne wanted a decision about the ditching. She was courteous, she was attentive, she answered everything he asked her. And she was not there. That was the thing he could not get hold of. Some light behind her face had been put out, and what remained was flawless and empty, like a room with the shutters closed. Her hand, pouring, was bare. "You will wear the ring," he said. "Of course, Your Grace, if you wish it," Sabina said, and put it on, and it sat on her finger like a thing borrowed for a portrait, and Lawrence found that he had gained nothing at all. 4 days later he rode over to the Rushbrooks on some invented business, and Delia came out to the stable yard to meet him with her hair half down laughing, and stopped laughing when she saw his face. "What have you done?" "Nothing. Why should I have done anything?" "Because Sabina wrote to my mother that she is very well and very happy and the weather has been fine," said Delia, "and that is what she writes when the roof is coming in." She folded her arms. She was 19 and had no fear of him whatever. "Lawrence, what did you say to her?" He could not, in the event, repeat it, but she got it out of him in the end, standing in the cold beside his horse, and when she had it she went white and then scarlet. "You did not." It meant nothing. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. "I do not care what o'clock it was." Delia's voice cracked. "Do you know what my sister did when your mother made that match? She came to my room the night before the settlement was signed, and she sat on my bed, and she said, 'Delia, do you mind it very much? 'Cause if you mind it, I will find a way to stop it.' She thought I wanted you. She was ready to give you up and be a poor relation in my mother's house for the rest of her life, rather than take something I wanted." Delia was shaking now, and I told her not to be a goose, because I did not want you, I wanted your greenhouses. And she has been carrying that about with her for 2 years and being careful of me, and you? She stopped. You gave it back to her. You told her she was the wrong one, in her own hall. Lawrence said nothing. "She has loved you since the 2nd week," said Delia. "It is the plainest thing in England, and you are the only man in 3 counties who never saw it. Go home." He went home. He tried, that fortnight, every clumsy remedy a rich man has to hand. He sent to town for emeralds, and Sabina thanked him beautifully and wore them once. He gave her the grey mare she had admired in the spring, and she rode it and thanked him. He offered her the house in Bruton Street for the season, and a box at the opera, and a new landau. She accepted every one of them with perfect gratitude and gave him nothing back, because he had not asked for the only thing she had stopped giving. On the 11th night he could not sleep, and he went down to the small parlour at the end of the west passage where she kept her writing desk, meaning to leave a note, meaning he did not know what he meant. The desk was not locked. It had never been locked. She had never had anything to hide from him, and that alone should have told him something 2 years ago. Inside, under the household accounts and the school subscriptions and the fever list for the village, there was a flat parcel done up in tape. They were letters. 40 or 50 of them, in her small, upright hand, folded and directed to him at Bruton Street and at his club and at the Ashenford estate office. And every single one of them unsent, the seals never broken, because the seals had never been made. He should not have read them. He read them. They were not love letters, or not in any way she would have admitted to. They were an account of her days. The frost had taken the espaliers. Old Merrick's cough was better, and she had sat with him. She had found a boy in the village who could read and had spoken to the curate about it. There was a heron on the lower water every morning at 7, and she thought he would like to know, because he had said once in her hearing, in the first month of their marriage, that he had not seen one on that stretch since he was a boy. 19 of them ended with some version of the same sentence, crossed out in every case and still perfectly legible. I hope you will come home soon. Lawrence, Duke of Ashenford, sat down on the floor of his wife's parlour at 2 in the morning with a bundle of letters he had never been sent, and understood, at last and far too late, precisely what he had thrown away in his own hall for the sake of filling a silence. He put the letters back exactly as he had found them, because they were hers and he had taken enough. In the morning Sabina asked, over the coffee, whether he would object to her going to Fernhollow for the winter. Fernhollow was hers, 900 acres and a damp stone house in the north, left her by her grandmother, the only property in the world that had never belonged to him. She had not been there since the wedding. The roof wants seeing too, she said, and I should like to look at the accounts myself. I would go on the 14th and come back in March, unless you have engagements that require me. Every instinct he possessed said. He was a duke. He had only to say no. No, Lawrence said. I have no engagements that require you. Something flickered across her face. He thought, for one moment, that it was disappointment, and the thought nearly undid him. Sabina. His voice was not steady. May I write to you? You are my husband, she said. You may do as you please. That is not what I asked. She looked at him then properly for the first time in a fortnight, and he saw how tired she was under the composure, and how long she must have been tired. Yes, she said at last, you may write. She went north on the 14th of November. He handed her into the carriage himself and stood in the drive until it was out of sight, which he had never once done in 2 years of her going anywhere. Then Lawrence went into his study and began badly to learn a thing he should have learned at 24. He wrote to her every 3rd day. He did not apologize in the letters, because he had apologized once in the hall, and she had accepted it with the same perfect courtesy she gave the emeralds, and he had understood that apology was a coin she no longer took. Instead he wrote her an account of his days. The frost had taken the espaliers on the south wall too, and Bourne said it was the worst since the year 9. Old Merrick had died on the 2nd of December, quietly, and had asked after her at the end, and Lawrence had sat with him for the last 2 hours because there had been nobody else, and had found it was not so terrible a thing to do. The boy in the village who could read was named Toby Sallow, and the curate said he had a real head on him, and Lawrence had settled his schooling for 4 years and told no one, and was telling her now because there was no one else he wished to tell. And in the 11th letter, in January, when the low water was frozen white, the heron came back this morning. I stood at the window from 7 until 1:15 and watched it, and I understood while I was standing there that you told me a thing once about that heron in the 1st month, and I answered you with something about the ditching. I have been going over 2 years of such answers. I am not asking you to come home. I am telling you that I saw it. She'd not write back, not once, all winter. He kept writing. In the last week of February, Lawrence had his solicitor down from London for 2 days, and then went north himself, 300 miles in filthy weather, and came to Fern Hollow at dusk on the 1st of March with the snow beginning. Sabina met him in the stone hall in a plain wool gown with her sleeves turned back and ink on her fingers, and she went white to the lips when she saw him, which he took, on the whole, as encouraging. "Is something wrong? Is it my mother?" "Everyone is well." He was shaking with cold, and it was not entirely the cold. "May I speak to you?" She took him into a small room with a peat fire and shut the door. Lawrence put a folded parchment on the table between them. "That is Fern Hollow," he said, "settled upon you absolutely, in your own name, out of my control and out of my hair's control forever. And with it 4,000 a year charged upon the Ashenford rents, payable to you quarterly, whether you live at Ashenford or here or in Italy, whether you see me again or you do not. It is signed and it cannot be undone by me. Yorba holds the counterpart." Sabina did not touch it. "Lawrence, what have you done?" "I have made you free," he said. "That is the whole of it." "Why?" "Because on the night I insulted you in my own hall, you took off my ring and you did not weep and you did not shout, and I did not understand for 11 days what I had seen. I thought I had seen a woman being cold." His voice cracked on it. "I had seen a woman who had nothing. No money of her own, no house of her own, nowhere on this earth to go, and a husband who had just told her to her face that she was the wrong sister, and she stood in the middle of that, with no ground under her at all, and she was gracious to me. She told me there was a fire in my dressing room." Sabina's hands had come up to the back of a chair. "I have thought of it every day since," Lawrence said. "You had no power and you behaved better than I did. So I have given you the power. I would not have you stay 1 hour with me, because you have nowhere else to be." He took the ring out of his pocket then and set it on the parchment. "I am not asking you to put it on. I know what my asking is worth just now." He made himself say the rest. "Sabina, I did not marry the wrong sister. I married a woman who was too good for me, and I have spent 2 years being too stupid and too comfortable to say so. And one night I said the opposite, because I was tired and it cost me nothing to say. And it cost you everything. Delia would not have made the evening go. Delia is a dear, silly girl, and I have never in my life wanted to hear what she thought about anything." He stopped. "I have read nothing this winter but your accounts of the frost, and I have wanted your opinion on every single thing that has happened to me since November. That is what a wife is. I have had one for 2 years and I did not notice until you stopped." And then Sabina, who had not wept in her own hall, who had not wept over the emeralds or the mare or 300 miles of silence, put both hands over her face and broke entirely. He did not touch her. He waited, standing, until she was ready, and when she reached out he took her hands and held them, ink and all. "You never came home," she said into his coat. 2 years. You were always going somewhere. I used to write those letters so that when you did come home I should have something to say that would make you stay in the room." "I know," said Lawrence. "I read them. It is the only dishonest thing I have ever done to you, and I would do it again." She laughed wetly, appallingly, and hit his chest with the flat of her hand, and he gathered her in and held her while the peat fire settled and the snow came down over 900 acres that were hers and nobody else's. They stayed at Fern Hollow a fortnight. She showed him the roof and a wall her grandmother had built. She put the ring back on herself on the 9th day without any ceremony at all, while they were arguing about drainage. They went south together in the 3rd week of March, and the Heron was on the low water, and Lawrence, Duke of Ashenford, stopped the carriage on the bridge so that his wife could see it. He never again said a careless thing to her at 1 o'clock in the morning. For 30 years, when they were apart, he wrote to her every 3rd day, an account of his days, and she kept every one of them in the desk that had never needed a lock. And to the end of his life, when men at his club spoke slightingly of their wives to fill a silence, the Duke of Ashenford would set down his glass and leave the room.